Hello and welcome to the Game Cupboard. My name's Rick and today I would like to talk to you about Ys Memories of Celceta on the PlayStation 4. Just a couple of things before we begin though. First, I was really lazy when I was capturing the footage for this and decided to use the PlayStation 4's internal capture instead of my capture card, and now the footage doesn't look too good and there's a horrible copyright logo in the left of the screen, so sorry about that. Honest mistake, I'll try not to do it again. I'm also going to be trying to keep spoilers down to an absolute minimum, so outside of the initial setup for the adventure, I won't be talking about the story at all, so don't worry about spoilers in that regard. So with that out of the way, please remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel for more content like this, and let's get on with the review. Ys Memories of Celceta is actually the fourth version of Ys 4 to be made, but only the first to be developed by Nihon Falcom themselves. Originally, there was Ys 4, Dawn of Ys, developed by Hudson Soft for the PC Engine CD-ROM, and Ys 4 Mask of the Sun, developed by Tonkin House for the Super Nintendo. They were both released in 1993 and wouldn't see an official release outside of Japan. Then, in 2005, Taito developed Ys 4 Mask of the Sun, A New Theory for the PlayStation 2, which again was only officially released in Japan. The West wouldn't see an official release of Ys 4 until 2013, when Ys Memories of Celceta would make its way to North American PlayStation Vitas, releasing in Europe shortly after in early 2014, with a Steam release following in 2018. It wouldn't be until June 2020 that Ys Memories of Celceta on the PlayStation 4 would make its way to the West, a year after its Japanese release. The story takes place in the unexplored Great Forest of Celceta, and follows series protagonist Adol Kristin, a young adventurer who stumbles into the frontier town of Kaznan where he collapses on the ground, with no memory of who he is or where he's been. Adol comes to at the inn where he meets a man claiming to be his friend, and learns about a monster attack at a nearby mine and follows his instincts to help. After returning from the mine, Adol and his friend Duran are tasked with going on an expedition to the Great Forest, creating a map of the unknown region as they go. Seeing this as a chance for Adol to discover what happened to him and recover his lost memories, the two friends agree to the task and their adventure begins. There is a lot more to the story than Adol's amnesia and map creation, but I don't want to ruin any of the surprises. Memories of Celceta is a genuinely fun adventure filled with twists and turns, and is full of interesting and likeable characters with their own stories to tell and reasons for joining Adol's quest. I usually groan at amnesia storylines as I find them to be a lazy trope and a sign of bad writing, but I really enjoyed it here because it feels like more than just a lazy plot device. It puts we the player in the same shoes as Adol because we, like him, have no idea what happened or what's to come. Memories of Celceta's gameplay loop can be broken down into 4 sections. Explore the Great Forest until you reach a new settlement, talk to the townsfolk and discover clues about the town's mystery, find the dungeon related to the town, and defeat the dungeon boss, solving the town's mystery. I love how each town the party visits has its own story to tell, while still being connected to the overall plot, and how the further down the rabbit hole Adol and company get, the stranger the story gets, turning a simple adventure into something with much higher stakes. The first part of the adventure follows Adol and Duran as they begin mapping the Great Forest of Celceta, and each town introduces a new key character who will join the party for a particular dungeon and leave when that town's story comes to an end. Eventually, all the characters begin travelling together and you can swap out party members as you wish, but this doesn't happen for a few hours. The Ys series has a huge focus on fast and furious combat, and Memories of Celceta is no exception. Each area you visit is full to the brim with aggressive enemies to cut through as you make your way around the land of Celceta. Pressing square performs a basic attack, while mashing it performs a simple combo. Each party member has a different attack type, slash, strike and pierce, and certain enemies are resistant to certain attack types while being weak to others. Pressing circle will cause you to switch to another party member, so it's easy to find the right character for a specific enemy weakness. The only issue I had with this is it switches you to the current position of that character instead of teleporting that character to your position. It's a small complaint, but sometimes I'll be attacking an enemy and switch characters only for that character to be half a screen away, breaking the flow of combat. This is a carryover from Ys 7, which was the first game in the series to use a party system, so it could be forgiven then, and the mechanic itself was later fixed in Ys 8, which came out after the Vita release of Memories of Celceta, but it would have been nice if they could have updated the switch mechanic for this release, as the current mechanics feel out of date. Right, while I'm having a moan, the AI does this weird thing where if it lags behind you, it just starts running in circles and getting caught on the scenery. I was moaning about it all the time while I was playing, and I forgot to write it in the script. So I remembered while I was editing and thought I'd just jump in and complain about that as well. It's the weirdest thing. But yeah, sorry for the interruption, and yeah, get back to the video. Although possible to defeat enemies with an attack type they're strong against, you actually receive a bonus for exploiting an enemy weakness. Defeating a foe with the attack type they are weak against will make it drop more gold and increase the drop rate of rare items. You can also use skills, which are special attacks that cause extra damage, status effects, or even buffs for the party, and are unlocked as each player progresses through combat. Using skills requires SP, which is gained from attacking enemies. Simply mashing the attack button will cause SP to recharge slowly, but waiting until your character flashes before attacking will charge the attack, making the first strike cause more damage and your character to regain a large amount of SP. Once a skill has been learned, it needs to be equipped to a face button, cross, square, triangle or circle, and once equipped, holding R1 and pressing the corresponding face button will use that skill. Defeating enemies with a skill will cause the party to regain half the SP spent to activate that skill, as well as giving a small amount of health back in the form of green life energy pickups. And then there's the extra skills, extremely powerful attacks that can only be used once the extra gauge has been filled. Filling the extra gauge requires you to use skills, and the more SP a skill costs to use, the quicker the extra gauge will fill. Once the gauge is full, holding R1 and pressing L1 will unleash the extra skill, devastating regular enemies and taking a nice chunk of health from boss monsters. Skills in Memories of Celceta are super effective, and I found that by using a combination of skills that freeze enemies in place and using the slower charge attack to regain SP, it was possible to essentially stun-lock the larger, more difficult enemies in place for an easy win. On top of a huge EXP boost, the larger monsters also give you some of the best items for upgrading your weapons and armour, so really they're just asking to be used like a piñata. I also found this to be the best way to farm EXP for more efficient level grinding. Experience points in Memories of Celceta decline drastically with each level you gain, and it's possible to out-level an area quickly, getting to the point where you're receiving no experience points at all. This can make levelling up feel like a chore, especially in a dungeon where you're too strong for the regular enemies, but the boss soaks up damage like a sponge and hits you like a tank. Pressing triangle will cause your character to guard for reduced damage, but guarding at the moment just before an attack hits will activate flash guard, nullifying all damage and making all attacks critical for a short time, as well as filling up the SP and extra gauges. And pressing X will cause your character to dodge roll out of the way of attacks, and dodging an enemy attack just before it connects will activate flash move, making the party invincible for a short time and causing enemies to move in slow motion for a while, similar to how Witch Time works in the Bayonetta games. Guarding and dodging add a level of strategy to the game that is missing from the earlier Ys titles, and although they're not really used against small enemies, they are absolutely essential for boss fights. Pulling off a flash guard feels great and can make some of the larger enemies and bosses an absolute breeze once you have the timings down. I definitely found myself guarding in combat more often than dodging, as I was having trouble timing my flash moves, but rolling is quicker and more efficient than running, so most of my time traversing the Great Forest looked like this. Your party is made up of 3 members, and once the ability to swap party members is unlocked, you can swap characters in and out as you wish. In order to keep the party rotating instead of permanently being made up of the 3 characters you like the most, Memories of Celceta has a party ability system in place. Party abilities become active once there are 3 members in your party and will either activate the rare drop ability when the party is made up of one of each attack type, causing enemies to drop rare items, and the increased damage ability when there are 2 of the same attack type in the party. I found the increased damage ability was best utilised during boss battles. Bosses in Memories of Celceta aren't weak to any particular attack, so once the option was available, I'd make sure my party had 2 of the same attack type in it, so I could get a sneaky attack bonus, giving me a slight advantage. The rare drop ability is best used when exploring the Great Forest, as there are an absolute ton of items to collect. By harvesting the various material gathering points scattered throughout the map, you can gain an abundance of ore and plant materials, as well as netting monster materials whenever you defeat an enemy. These items can be sold for money, swapped for other, better items, or used to reinforce weapons and armour at the blacksmiths in the various towns located around Celceta. The first blacksmith you come across can only reinforce your equipment using gems and metals, which can be collected as quest rewards, or by exchanging the various ore you collect from mining spots with a trader. The exchange rate is something like 10 low quality items for 1 high quality, but it is worth it just for the high quality goods. And unlike shopping or equipment reinforcement, trading materials doesn't cost anything. There are 8 stats that can be reinforced on both weapons and armour, with the stats on the weapons enhancing a character's attack, and the stats on the armour enhancing their defence. By utilising weapon reinforcement, it is possible to create some truly devastating weapons, capable of inflicting all manner of status effects and damage buffs, and armour that renders you almost immune. This is especially true once you discover other blacksmiths who are able to reinforce your gear with plant and animal materials. The rule of thumb seems to be the rarer the material, the bigger the stat boost, but reinforcing equipment costs gold, and the higher the enhancement level, the higher the cost, so it can get very expensive very quickly. And new weapons and armour come thick and fast in Memories of Celceta, either by finding them in treasure chests around the world, buying them from a merchant in a town or village you come across, or as quest rewards. And more than once I'd find myself spending thousands of gold and several resources into a weapon I was currently carrying, only to stumble across a brand new weapon with a much higher base damage, rendering my souped up weapon all but obsolete as I started the upgrade process again. As well as items for crafting, there are special artifacts hidden around Celceta that grant the party special abilities when equipped, such as the ability to breathe underwater or sprint. The artifacts found in dungeons are mostly used for dungeon specific puzzles, but there are extra artifacts hidden around the Great Forest that aren't essential but are nice to have. Artifacts can also eventually be upgraded, but that isn't essential, and they all work perfectly well without the upgrades. The Great Forest truly lives up to its name, and reaching that 100% gold can be a tedious task at times. You can check the world map at any time by pressing the touchpad, and it updates automatically as you explore, increasing the completion percentage and marking down any material spots, treasure chests, towns and dungeons you come across on your journey, as well as story and side quest destinations. There's also a mini-map that you can access by pressing R2, but it only displays the area you're currently in, which can get annoying when trying to get around. I'd find myself occasionally taking the wrong exit and having to backtrack and try again. This could have been alleviated by including an option to view more than your immediate area, but it's a nitpick more than an actual complaint. The sensitivity on map progression seems a little off to me too. Once I'd visited every area of the map, my completion was still only around 97%. It appears that there are some areas that don't completely register you have been there, so I had to check the map meticulously for any outlined areas that were lighter than the ones around them, and return to that area hugging the wall and hoping that it would increase my total percentage. I eventually did hit 100%, but it really was more annoying than it needed to be. Luckily there are stone monuments located all throughout the Great Forest that once activated will restore your hit points, cure any status effects, and allow you to teleport to other stone monuments of the same colour. And later in the game you're given an item that lets you teleport freely between any monument on the map. It is a huge time saver, and that, coupled with the abundance of shortcuts to unlock throughout the Great Forest, was a big help toward the end of my playthrough, especially when I was clearing up quests and completing a map percentage. Each town the party visits has quests that become unlocked once that town's mystery has been solved. They're posted on a board in the town's inns and automatically add to your quest journal once you check the board. The quests range from item delivery to monster hunts, and for the most part the quests were a lot of fun. But there were a couple of quests that were basically hide and seek that verged on tedious. Luckily they don't take very long, and the rewards are always worth the effort. Scattered throughout the Great Forest are orbs of light containing Adol's lost memories. When you're in the general vicinity of an orb, a VHS-style static effect will appear on screen indicating it's close by. Approaching the orb as Adol and pressing triangle will trigger the memory. Depending on the memory and its importance to the overall story, it will either be a series of visual novel style images, a short cutscene, or an extended playable memory recounting the first time Adol was in the area. After viewing a memory, Adol will receive a permanent stat boost, so it's in your best interest to find them all. Luckily, whenever the party set up a campsite during their expedition, all the memories in the immediate area appear on the map, making finding them considerably less taxing. This is an action unique to Adol, but other party members have their own unique actions that can be performed in the field too, such as Durin's ability to open locked treasure chests. Much like the party abilities, unique actions are a great way to ensure you keep your party members rotating. Visually, Memories of Celceta is fine. The environments and character models remain the same as they were on the Vita, but the textures and resolution are now HD. It runs at a pretty solid 60 FPS, apart from one area where for some reason the frame rate just drops and the game looks like it's really struggling. There are some genuinely impressive backgrounds, and I love the way it introduces new towns by showing them in the distance first. It gives Celceta a true sense of scale, but it's only an illusion as it usually only takes 2 or 3 screens to reach the place that looked miles away before. I can't be too hard on it though, it was a Vita game first after all, and for a Vita game, the scale and detail is pretty impressive. The music, as always, is superb. The Falcom sound team knocked it out of the park with the Memories of Celceta soundtrack, and hearing the improved sound on the PS4 is a real treat. I think my favourite track is the theme for Frontier Town Kaznan. It's a reorchestrated version of the track Promolog from the original Ys 4 soundtracks, and it's just delightful. It's full of energy that really conveys the feeling of a grand adventure about to begin. It reminds me of the theme for the town of Palm in Grandia in that sense, and I've been whistling it for days. Other additions include improved controller mapping and a Japanese voice option, which is good news for those of you who are into that. Overall, Ys Memories of Celceta is a fantastic game. I love the characters and the world they're in, and even though I don't think the story is the best in the series, it's still one of the good ones. The characters are wonderful, and the various locales of the Great Forest all look and feel unique and give emphasis to just how big the land of Celceta is. The music is some of the catchiest in the series, and exploring the forest was a real joy. The story moves along at a quick pace, and there are enough side stories and twists to keep me engaged from the beginning right up until the very end. If I had to complain about one thing, it's that it feels more like a port than a true remaster. Don't get me wrong, it's a fantastic port, but I think it could have really benefited from the full remaster treatment. The improved textures and resolution is nice, but improved character models would have really brought it up to date. Tweaking the map tracking and improving the area map would have made exploration less tedious at the end, and giving it Ys 8's character switching mechanic would have kept the flow of combat nice and quick. But as I said earlier, these are just nitpicks, just a few ways that Falcom could have made an already great game even better. And Ys Memories of Celceta really is a great game. I highly recommend it to fans of the series who have been thinking about playing it through again, and I can recommend it to new fans of the series trying to decide which one to play next. I can even recommend it to people looking to play an Ys game for the first time. Although the story takes place after Ys 1, 2 and 3, characters only make vague references to them, and for the most part, Memories of Celceta is its own self-contained story, but most importantly it's fun to play, and at £25 for a 30-hour game you really can't go wrong. if I had to give it a numbered score, I'd probably go with a high 7 or an 8 out of 10. Just seems fair to me. But that is it for my Ys Memories of Celceta review. Have you played it? What did you think? Let me know in the comments down below or over at Twitter at GameCupboardRick. But with all that said and out of the way, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.